carbon and add hydrogen to it, hydrogen and I forget anyway, to make carbohydrates. And then energy, and that's sent down to the root. And that continues on all the time. Well, the most abundant thing in a plant now next to water is carbon. Okay, let's go back to my greenhouse. My floor, instead of concrete or gravel like everybody puts in house, I used wood chips, cedar wood chips. Smelled good. I made my own potting soil with a lot of compost and a little bit of peat moss and some sand, and made a nice looking with stuff, made a nice potting soil. So when I closed up my greenhouse, I would have it full of plants. I had a lot of decay going on, and always had an abundance of carbon dioxide from those plants that take carbon from. And all them other people I've seen a greenhouse twice big this room, concrete, growing plants in containers. Containers was peat moss and perlite and a little bit of pine bark, sometimes just peat. And it was all glass and steel and concrete. There was no CO2 being released from decay. Decay gives off CO2, microdose. Those poor plants were starving to death for CO2, and they were feeding them chemicals, and they were spraying them. Meanwhile, they forgot about the most abundant thing. See, people don't think. You're supposed to study nature, not read books written by some other idiot that read some other idiot that read some... We never, ever had a disease or insect in that greenhouse, and it was built in 1972 or 73. Roscoe Jordan only went 4 years, but it was solid tomatoes every year. He never had a disease or insect because he had a lot of manure decomposing in the soil, giving off CO2. So the CO2 can be taken out of the air with proper farming methods. That's simple. Put it back in the soil. Because that's where it came from.
Right.
Anyway, I belong to an organization called Holistic Resource Management, or Holistic Ranch Management. And these guys all have big ranches. And you can walk out in the pastures anytime, and all of the pastures everywhere looks like this. You never see them eaten down to the ground. And these guys, they studied under a guy named Alan Saber. He was from Africa, from Zimbabwe. He was exiled out of there on account of politics, and he went to Australia, and he studied the prairie in Australia, and then he came to Texas, West Texas, and studied the prairie here. And then he got to learn about the buffalo. And the buffalo at one time were greater numbers than all the animals we have today. And they didn't destroy the prairie. The reason they didn't destroy the prairie, they always stayed in tight groups. When they were in a pretty close-knit group like that, the mountain lions in the woods couldn't run their calves off, steal their babies, because they could easily trample the coyotes to death.
Right.
The mountain lions to death. That protected the young. And of course, in a tight bunch like that, they're dropping a lot of urine and manure. And they're constantly moving to get away from that urine and manure. Well, they always say the tall grass prairie was like this and ate it down to here. Well, the short grass prairie was like here and ate it down to here. They never ate it down to the ground. And with all that urine and manure down there now you had the grubs and the pill bugs and the tumble bugs and the earthworms and everything, microbial activity working on it and giving off carbon dioxide. Well, there's still green leaf surface above that manure to capture that carbon dioxide and put it back in the system. And now you got all them wormholes and everything and all that litter down there protected from the sunlight. It can't dry out. It stays alive. And now every little shower you get can soak in, and it's protected under that mulch. These guys, the drought don't hurt them. It makes so much sense. Here's another one of those ranchers over here. These are two 10,000-acre ranches side by side in the same location. Each one 10,000 acres. There's one of our HRM ranchers. He was our president one time. Owns this ranch. This ranch is operated conventionally. This guy has more cattle on this 10,000-acre ranch than this guy does. This guy almost got twice as many cattle as this guy does. But look at his grass. Now, when a cow comes along, she ain't got much grass to eat. Besides, when she drops manure, like you can see some along here, when it's being broken down by microbial activity, giving off CO2, there's no green leaf above it to capture that CO2 and put it back in the system. When you drop the manure down in here, it's protected, it stays moist longer, you got all this life working on it. It's releasing carbon dioxide, but you got a lot of green leaf surface above it to capture that CO2. And the fact that it's down in that grass, the wind can't diffuse it in the air. It stays there and it's recycled right back in the soil. So simple. So simple. Now, no-till agriculture does the same thing. This is what Joe Bradford in the Riverine Valley is teaching. In 1992, I was invited to Stevens Point, Wisconsin to give a talk on biological insect control, on beneficial insect control. And the speaker there was a retired colonel appointed by the then president to study the impact the automobile was having on the environment. Eisenhower at that time. Eisenhower started the interstate system.
Right.
Killed our railroad I worked on. Almost killed it. No, we still got coal and rock. That's all we want anyway. Anyway, he made a statement. He said if there were just some way we could build the organic content of our farmlands just 0.1% every year, we would offset all that carbon dioxide we're putting in the air by burning transportation fuels, but nobody knows how to do it. This right here does that. That builds the organic content of our farmlands 0.1% every year. Guess what? HRM ranching builds it more than that. Even beats this. So if everybody went to HRM type ranching and no-till agriculture, we could take all that CO2 we're putting in there and put it right back in the soil where it came from. That's simple. That's simple. But that don't make the people that sell a lot of fertilizer and chemicals, don't make them rich. You don't need any here. Well, Monsanto is going to get a little good out of this too. This is a previous crop of milo. Anyway, you combine the milo and then let the stubble stand and let the weeds grow in it, let the stubble grow some more and everything. And then a certain length of time before it's time to plant cotton, then he sprays Roundup over the whole field. The Roundup kills everything. That's okay, Roundup's all right. I studied it. A lot of organic people are against it. I didn't like that at first until I really studied it, but I'll tell you that story. Anyway, now he's got all that green matter, all that dead matter laying there. You see, you got this mulch trapping all the rain. None can evaporate away. Now he got the grubs and the pill bugs and the earthworms and everything working under there and building the soil. But the greatest benefit they found with this small cotton plant, before they would plow the land and then bed it up in high beds and then bust the beds open and plant the cotton down in kind of in a lower spot. There's nothing there to protect the soil, and the soil is kind of dusty and dry. It dries out, they've been plowing it too much, lost all their moisture. And now here comes a north wind, a late north wind, and blowing that sand and it blasts the cotton out. Just beats the chlorophyll out of the leaf. Then they got to replant. That won't ever happen here. This guy now takes money to the bank when his neighbor on either side of the fence has crop failure. He makes money when the old method has crop failure. The same way with the ranchers. Now, when he mentioned Roundup, then I kind of had a fit, you know, that's nasty. So I called Dr. Elaine Ingram. Well, first I called my good friend, Dr. Don Marks. He's a mycorrhizal specialist. I said, people around here are using Roundup, big growers. He said, well, in Texas, don't worry about it. It's gone in 4 days. There's no evidence it was ever used. Huh. So I called Dr. Elaine Ingram, and she said, well, where you are, Malcolm, she says, in 3 or 4 days, there's no evidence it's ever there. There's nothing there. So it so happened, I was invited to Texas State University, San Marcos, to listen to a guy give a talk on no-till agriculture. Somebody sent me an email. I don't know who it was. There wasn't no address on it. So I went over, and I sat in the front row and listened to him. And the guy had a program on no-till agriculture. Boy, that is the way to go. So I want to learn to know this guy. He's an older, elderly fellow. His name is Bruno Alisi, Dr. Bruno Alisi. So I made friends with him, offered to go buy him a coffee. We got to and everything. I said, by the way, what's your background? He said, oh, I was in charge of research and development at Monsanto until I retired at age 70. Wow. I said, oh, tell me about Roundup. They discovered it. He said, Malcolm, Stranded in the desert was a gallon of Roundup. He said you could drink it and walk out of the desert. It'd keep you alive. He said, but what you don't want to do is miss swallow. He says Roundup